there are some ceanothus and manzanitas and things that could fall into those categories. I was kind of thinking maybe a more low-growing kind of spreading plant might be good for a situation like that in the parkway. Maybe something like the Nevens woolly sunflower, the Constantia Nevinii would be a good one. That one has really cool pinnately lobed leaves, and it has like a really white fuzzy leaves on it, which are quite attractive. And that one would kind of, be maybe 2 to 3 feet high in general, and it can kind of be a more spreading plant where it's wider than it is tall. Things like a lot of the salvias, there's one salvia called the Point Sal spreader, which is a leucophyllum cultivar that is also a low-growing plant that spreads quite a bit. And then other things that we use are like the Baja, like the bush snapdragons as well. So I think a lot of those could be good things. And if you did want to go a little taller, then even that St. Catherine's lace would be another one that would fit into that space. It might need a little bit of pruning to keep it contained to a 7-foot area, but they don't get much larger than that. It's kind of the approximate maximum size, I would say. So yeah, there's a few options there.
I would also say maybe yarrow if you're willing to, since it is lower, it can take a lot of abuse for people walking across it. If you still want to have people walk across the area, yarrow is a good option. Also attracts a lot of native insects and fragrant and medicinal.
Yeah, I've seen situations where people have made like a whole lawn kind of a situation out of yarrow. So yeah, that would definitely be.
They actually mow it just like a lawn.
Yeah. That might be better for somewhere more along the coast, perhaps. I don't know.
I think it could work here in North Orange County.
Yeah.
It certainly works up in the Pasadena area. I'm familiar with several yarrow lawns there.
Okay.
No sports fields, though. I've never seen it as a sports field.
No, I don't think it would take that much abuse.
So, Emmanuel, do you have any ideas on what are some other colorful natives? We have, the California poppy. What are some other colorful natives?
So the first two that come to mind were probably the first two that attracted me to natives, which would be the Indian mallow, the Butelon palmeri, which we have an abundance of for sale. Has very fuzzy leaves, very drought tolerant. If you have a dry area that you want to colonize and don't want to spend a lot of money planting over time, that's a good one because it'll seed a lot and it'll colonize that area. Has a sort of the golden buttercup flowers that are really pretty. The other one that comes to mind is going to be the apricot mallow, probably my favorite native overall. It's got the apricot, orange flowers, also like the mallow leaf, and also very fuzzy. And I really like the hummingbird sage for the overall fragrance, ability to just kind of be cultivated in between other plants as a ground cover filler, and has beautiful sort of, we have red or yellow flowered hummingbird sages. What else is on the list? I'd probably, if you're looking for blue or purple, I would go for the Scissorincium bellum, which we also have an abundance of for sale. They call it blue-eyed grass, but it's technically not a grass, but it has pretty little purple or indigo flowers at the tips. Now I'd go back to the Salvia Winifred Gilman if you want more blue or purple flowered things. And then, of course, the irises are beautiful colored plants. The blue flax, Linum lewisii, more blue there. What else you want to throw any in,
Well,
Greg?
actually, you have kind of run into a question that somebody else posted. I'll just read it to you, and maybe you can add on to what you've talked about so far.
Sure.
And that is, somebody asked, what about mallows, Pacific iris, and then what I haven't heard here yet this afternoon, verbenas.
Verbena.
We all love verbenas.
Yes. Probably one of my favorite aromatic fragrances. It's not too floral, not too musky. It's very sweet and subtle. But we have the verbena. I think Greg mentioned it. Verbena Lilacina de la Mina, and it's got purple flowers and takes a season to establish. But once it does, pretty much every year after that, it's just like a purple lavender cloud in your landscape, and it pairs well with other oranges and yellows and blues. And those are the verbena and the iris and the mallows are all pretty drought tolerant and adaptable to full sun or part sun, part shade situations. What do you think, Greg? Anything to add to those details?
Well, I think were they talking about like the care and the perhaps pruning of things like verbena and mallows and the iris. The iris shouldn't really require much pruning at all. I mean, they're pretty small perennial plants with those strap-shaped leaves. Really, the only thing I would do is deadhead it when the flowers are spent. And if you happen to have some dead leaves on there, you could prune those out at any time, and that shouldn't be a problem. The Verbena Lilacina, which is the only one that we're actually selling right now. And that one can kind of be treated like a lot of the other sages and things, and even like lavender, where you don't want to cut it back. You want to cut back like off the old inflorescence, all the old flowering stalks, and you can cut back down into some of the smaller branches that have kind of like the soft growth to them. And you could kind of make like a sort of like a mound type of a shape with that to kind of, you basically encouraging some more vigorous growth to take place towards the tip or towards the inner, the inside of the plant, so that not all the growth is coming off the outside of it, the very outer edge of it, which would then kind of make it kind of scraggly looking and might just get kind of too big for a certain place. With the mallows here, it's kind of also just deadheading, and if there are certain branches that are just getting a little too long and wavy, then we'll cut those back to like kind of shape it a little bit. But I mean, there's not a whole lot that you really have to do like throughout the year. It's kind of just a one-time situation, typically in the fall, to prune those things.
So Emmanuel kind of hit on something that we haven't talked about yet, and I think it should be brought up, in the context of these native plants that hopefully people will take home truckloads and truckloads home with them. They're not drought tolerant right off. I remember when I replanted my front yard here in Fullerton in all drought tolerant plants, I actually watered quite a bit the first summer. So I planted my yard in early December. When spring hit, we still had some rain, but once summer hit, boy, I was watering. So that whole first hot season, warm season, I watered. And I haven't, and so that went through a whole cycle. The second season, I watered a lot less than I did the first season.
Right.
But then after that, I never watered again. So would you talk a little bit about that, Greg and Emmanuel?
Do you want to start off with that?
Sure, yeah, I'll start off. I think from all the research, it seems like a lot of that really has to do with the root development and building up what we call the rhizosphere, which is all the fungal life in the soil, which ultimately, once that's established, is going to create all the networks within the soil to create a biomass to retain the moisture and also feed the roots. the roots feed the fungus, and the fungus defend the roots. So you're basically you're watering to encourage all that growth. And I would say that the best cultural practice for establishing natives would be to mulch the soil early. So just a simple organic mulch, you know, like a 0 to 2 inch mulch of nice wood and organic matter, and water in the early morning. Watering early morning is always best. If you don't have automatic irrigation, hand watering is fine, but always early. And the reason we also encourage early morning rather than late afternoon when the sun's going down is because late afternoon is, you don't want that because things can actually wet out and you can spread different mildews like with any other cultivated plant. So early morning watering and mulch through that first summer is going to be a good buffer against having to really catch up with the watering.
Absolutely. And yeah, you want to do, in general, you want to do deep soaks as you're establishing those plants to try to encourage those roots to reach down deep through the soil. So that's I mean, these native plants are, you know, well adapted. I mean, they're growing all on the hillsides here around that surround us, you know. So they're very well adapted to our Mediterranean climate. And so they, you know, we hardly ever see rain here in the summertime. I mean, it's pretty rare. And so once they are established, they should be able to take that whole summer long without any water. But most people like to give them a little bit of water just to keep things looking kind of fresh. And it could be maybe, you know, once a month once they're established. But it's that establishment phase where you're you know, the plants have to get used to your lawn or your yard, wherever it is, and become adapted and established in that location. So they need those deep roots to be able to tap into any kind of little bit of moisture that might be lingering down there.
So I've been asked to make a bit of an announcement here. As you all know, the Arboretum is closed right now, and so we're not able to conduct our business activities. And that has greatly impacted our budget, to be honest with you. We've got many people who are furloughed. Our maintenance staff, our hort staff, Emmanuel is included, is only back at part-time. And so we are in need of donations to help get enough money so that we can bring our staff back. And so right now, Cal State Fullerton is having a scale funder. It's a crowdfunding thing going on right now with the university. And so if you made a donation right now, we have a foundation, the My Son Foundation, who will double what you give to our crowdfunding site. So if you would please, when you have a moment, go to fullerton.scalefundr.com/project/22244. And that's a lot to remember. So if you don't remember, send a message to farboretum@fullerton.edu and ask for the Scale Funder web address, and we'll get that to you. What are some low maintenance California native plants that we are selling?
I'd say the top one is probably going to be our buckwheat. It's usually the first one we recommend when people just don't want to be out watering or managing too often.
I would agree. I mean, buckwheats, again, the sages, those are all the ones that we kind of, that we talked about, the good ones to get started on. Those are all real low maintenance. You know, like I said, it's pretty much, you might be out there pruning it once right around this time of year. October is a time that we're typically very busy in our native gardens, but I mean, we have several acres worth here. but we go through, and that's kind of our time to do our cutbacks and pruning. And then it's pretty much hands off for most of the rest of the year. But yeah, a lot of those desert plants like the Abutilon palmeri, there's the Palmer's Indian mallow, something like that. You know, it doesn't actually require any pruning except for just to make it a little tidier, you could deadhead it. And that's really about all that you need to do. And it's very tough, drought tolerant. And then that Baja, the fairy duster would be another one that we actually don't do anything to ours. We water them every now and then, but there's absolutely no maintenance that happens with those. If a branch happens to die, then we'll prune that out, but it's very, very little.
A lot of the grasses are low maintenance as well. You don't even need to prune them. You just rake them out, rake out the dead stuff every now and then. But otherwise, they're very drought tolerant with no maintenance.
Absolutely. Yeah, all those bunch grasses.
And so do we have bunch grasses at our native sale?
Yes.
Why don't you run down the list real quick?
Do you have any of that, Emmanuel? Or?
Just off the top of my head, we have the California fescue. We have the...
That's an excellent one. I love the bluish kind of color to the California fescue.
Yeah, it's nice for adding contrast. It's got the blue-gray tone. We have the Sporobolus areoides, the alkali drop seed. The flower heads kind of look like little Christmas trees. They're really cool for setting up a little grass garden that looks very picturesque when it's waving in the wind. We have the seashore bent grass, right, Greg? The side oats grama, which is a smaller grass, has little eyelash-like grass flower heads.
Right, and then we have the giant wild rye as well, and so that one gets to be quite large. That could be 6 feet tall about when it finally grows in, and it could be pretty widespreading as well. And with that one, since that's something that will go through the whole summer without having any water. They will look a little bit, things start to dry up here and there, so that stuff can be pruned out as needed. But then what we do a lot of the times in some place like our native meadow is we'll actually just cut those down to the ground right around, in October or maybe November. And then as the rains come, or if we start watering in there when we sow our wildflower seed, the plant just regenerates from the root system again, and it has all fresh growth. And they could be, they probably get 4 or 5, maybe even 6 feet tall, right, Emmanuel?
Right. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's miraculous how they can be cut down to the ground and just grow back 5, 6 feet tall every year.
I want to kind of follow up a little bit on your watering comment, Emmanuel. Somebody has given us a question. So the question is, so it's better to water in the morning than it is in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I know that from my experience, the answer is yes, water in the morning. And I don't mean 11 a.m. or 11:30. When I was establishing my front yard, I was up when the sun came up. That's when I was watering. That's the best time to do it. The wind is not there to blow away any excess moisture. The evaporation because of the heat is not going to happen because it's cool. And so all the water that you're applying to the plant, to the ground, most all of it is going into the ground to support the plant. It's not being blown off or evaporated in the heat. Can you add anything to that, Emmanuel?
Yeah, that's spot on. The other main thing is that in the morning, the plants are waking up, so they're going to use that water. And in the evening, 4 to 7 p.m., depending on the season, it can still be hot and humid, and watering and the water droplets can actually spread different pathogens. And because the plant is losing light, the photosynthesis is kind of dwindling rather than waking up as it is in the morning. And so the water isn't really being used as much as it is during the morning. So you're spot on with that.
So what kind of native plants grow in pots?
Want to go for that one, Greg?
Sure. You can actually grow quite a few of them in pots. I would actually say that, again, it's kind of like those ones that we have been highlighting this whole entire session would be the ones that work well. Things like those salvias, monkey flowers, some of those buckwheats would do great. That Indian mallow would do fantastic. You could do any of those grasses in pots. So yeah, I mean, all of these plants are quite adaptable, and I think just about most of them would do well in pots.
Yeah, it's really just a matter of how long you want them to live, right?
Yeah, I mean, with a potted plant, you're always going to have to repot it and do things to, open up the root system and take care of your the roots that are all confined in there. But yeah, it depends on what your personal taste is, I suppose. Some of the desert plants for us seem like, for us, sometimes they don't seem to like pots as much as some of the other plants, but they seem like they could likely mostly be pretty adaptable.
Yeah, a lot of the things that spread underground through the rhizomes do well in pots as well, because then you can actually take them out and just divide them and propagate them pretty easily instead of having to prune the roots and put a more woody plant into shock.
Right. Our roses do well. The Rosa californica, the California rose. What else? I was just thinking of something else. But I mean, there's probably any of the Dudleas. If somebody's looking for just a very small potted plant, I think those ones are great as potted plants. A lot of the, I guess, the perennials and what we would call, again, remember, the woody perennials, things like those sages and things of that nature would do well.
Why don't you explain what a Dudley is? We haven't talked about that, and that's one of my favorite plants.
They're small little succulents. They call them live forevers, or stone crops. Most of them, I mean, there's many different types. Actually, I think we are pretty much in the center of diversity for Dudleas in California and the western U.S., and then down into a little bit of Mexico. But yeah, it's a fun succulent plant to grow. Some of them are, will do better or will not really tolerate the summertime water. Others, but they may kind of shrivel up and go dormant and look like, they kind of shrink. But then once you start watering them again in the cool season, they grow and they form little rosettes of leaves. And yeah, it's a fun succulent plant.
What are some plants that attract hummingbirds and butterflies?
Do you want to
native plants?
Sure. Yeah, the hummingbird sage is the first one that comes to mind for hummingbirds, appropriately named. I have that in my front yard, and almost every day or every other day, we see hummingbirds come up to the little tubular flowers and take nectar from those flowers. Any of our natives that have tubular flowers are going to attract hummingbirds. So things like the Justicia californica, the chuparosa, which is Spanish for hummingbird, that's going to attract it. The galvesia, or I believe it's called the
bush snapdragon.
Bush snapdragon, yeah, that's the common name. Really any native with tubular flowers is going to attract the hummingbirds. And do you want to talk about the butterflies, Greg?
Sure. Well, also a lot of the salvias, they have those tubular flowers. I've seen hummingbirds attracted to those quite a bit as well. Things like for butterflies, I think butterflies, a lot of the times they like a nice big landing platform. Buckwheats are well known for attracting a lot of different butterflies. Things like sunflowers, and things in the sunflower family, like the Nevens woolly sunflower would be one, and the coast brittlebush, and both the encelias. What else? We have what's that?
I was going to mention, outside of those two pollinators, the bees are really attracted to a lot of natives as well. So the white sage or the bee sage, which we also have for sale, is a good one for bees. And the verbena that we talked about earlier, the bees love that one. A lot of our ceanothus, when those are in bloom, they're just full of bees.
Yeah.
Were you going to mention something else, Greg?
Well, the milkweeds, of course, are the food plants for monarchs. So those are another butterfly attractor.
We're kind of nearing the end, or heading towards the end of this Q&A session. Wondering if each of you could talk about one of your favorite native plants, and why is it your favorite?
It's such a hard question. Because so many natives are so amazing for so many different reasons. I would probably say for me, the Dendromicon Harfordii, the bush poppy, native to the Channel Islands, was probably the one that sparked my interest in natives in the first place. It's got pretty waxy leaves, blue, sort of gray, slate gray leaves, with the poppy flowers that are really yellow and golden. And I think it was just one day here in our chaparral collection and a couple other areas over in Fullerton that also have it, I just saw the sunshine through the flowers, and it just really inspired me and made me really look at plants in a different way, and made me realize that every plant, but especially California natives, the fact that they're so resilient and can adapt to so many different soils and climates here in California, their expression is a representation of the soil and the climate and the weather. And that would probably be just my favorite, the one that really sucked me into the natives. But I would say that apricot mallow is probably my favorite. Just love the color. It's so subtle. You see it from far away, and it's like, oh, it's got a little bit of orange in there, and you don't really know what it is. And then you get closer, and it's just these really small little apricot flowers. And I think that's the beauty of natives, is they're so understated in their elegance that a lot of people that don't know about them tend to overlook them and write them off and think of them as just dull, drought-tolerant plants. But once you really familiarize yourself with how much color and life thrives on natives, it's pretty great.
Do we have that Dendromicon in our sale this?
You do not have that one for sale.
Not,
you have an apricot mallow.
Well, next year we need to have that.
Yeah.
I've forgotten all about that. It is one of my favorite plants too.
It's a nice one.
Greg,
I don't know if I could ever pick one. I think
why don't you pick one that we're selling?
I think it changes every day, and with the seasons, as I see them, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that one, or there's so many plants jumbled around in my head. But you know, for me, it's really like these a few different groups that I just always love, and I feel like they should be a part of like any native garden, and those are the sages and the buckwheats. And then one that always catches my eye is that Nevens woolly sunflower as well. It's with the divided leaves, and then we've grown a lot of that plant, and when you grow them all from seeds, you can see that there's a lot of variation, a lot of genetic variation in the leaf shape. Some of them are much more finely divided. Some are larger, bigger lobes on them. But then when they're flowering, they're beautiful as well, with their giant clumps of yellow flowers that again attract those butterflies.
So would you say that, this is for both of you, whoever wants to answer, floristically, California is probably one of the most diverse places in the continental US?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I've been working with native plants most all of my career. And I think I get most excited when I'm out in the wilderness, walking along, hiking through, whether it's a forest or it's a meadow or wherever I'm at. And then I get to see something that we're growing in the Arboretum, and I get to see it growing in its native habitat. One that just comes to mind right now is Rosa californica. I mean, if you've ever seen that growing wild, that is something to see. Flowers profuse. I mean, it's like a bush. Of course, you can't walk through it because it's the meanest rose you've ever encountered, but they're absolutely beautiful in the native habitat. And so I guess, growing natives is not such a bad thing. It's good for the plants. It's not only good for plants, it's good for our water, conserving water. It's good for the insects, the birds, the butterflies, and a lot of other things. And they're also very pretty and beautiful to look at. They are low maintenance. And you don't have to throw a bunch of chemicals and pesticides and herbicides at them. So, they're made for growing in our climate, in our region. Is there anything, Greg or Emmanuel, you'd like to add on or say before we sign off here?
Well, we're excited about our native sale. We've been growing these plants for all through the year in our nursery. Everything has been propagated here. Unfortunately, we lacked a lot of our volunteer help, which we typically have in normal years. So it was tough for us to get all these plants together, but we have a good selection of plants and a lot of them to sell. So I just hope that people could come out and go native.
Emmanuel?
I think he might be frozen.
Uh-oh. How can he be frozen? It's almost 100 degrees out. Well, I guess with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. I want to thank everybody for showing up for your lunch. This is our sort of our brown bag lunch that we do periodically. We have another one coming up on, is it October 23rd?
The 29th.
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 It'll be at noon, just like this one. So think about some questions if you'd like to learn more. Of course, that'll be, we'll already be a week into the members portion of the native plant sale. And then our non-members portion will have just started.
Yeah, I think we were hoping that perhaps once people start shopping, maybe they'll generate questions as they're looking for plants. And if they can't decide on one plant or another, that's where we could really give our advice and kind of help them with plant selection is what we're really looking for.
And I would also like to add that if you're not a member and you want to get early selection, you can easily become a member. Just go to our website and buy a membership. They're not that expensive. And by the way, if you buy a membership before the end of October, the Myson Foundation is going to double that membership. So your $50 membership actually is $100 to the Arboretum. So that really helps us out, and we need some help right now. So Emmanuel, do you have anything else?
Yeah, thank you. I had to walk away because our arborists are starting to chip over here.
Okay.
No, just wanted to say thank you for joining us. And it's always so rewarding to hear all the feedback we get every year and hear all the curiosity about native plants. It really makes everything worth it. You know, we like Greg said, there's so much prep work that goes into the native sale. We start, you know, the fall or the winter before each year, getting all these ready, and with all the help of the volunteers and other staff and all the media and marketing and outreach, it always ends up being a great production and always fulfilling to get all the babies out there to their new homes, out of their cages and into the wild or into the the domesticated life of living with their new families. So hope everyone gets to pick up everything that they want this year and cultivate them and share the life with their families.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you back here in a couple of weeks for our next Q&A. Watch our website for more information, and don't forget to buy a membership. Signing off now. Have a good day, all.